Hey y'all, welcome back to Ready to Wire. As part of our Keeneland card series, we're going to be looking at Saturday's late pick 4. And the reason we're not going to look at the late pick 5 is there's a maiden to start and there's tons of first-time starters and there's just too many possibilities. So I thought we'd go with a more plausible sequence to take a look at. So we're going to look at the pick 4, but it does have some interesting races in it. So let's take a look. The first leg of the pick 4 is the 7th race at Keeneland, and it's a starter allowance N2L for 3-year-old fillies, and it's run on the dirt at 6 furlongs. Number 1 is Aunt Becca, and she is sired by Uncle Mo and got Broken Vow underneath. Won her first out, maiden on synthetic, and was a key race, so that's always a good sign. Came back in the next race and did okay, not the greatest, and more to the point, the buyers didn't improve any. So I'm wondering if this one's kind of sputtering a little bit as far as progression goes, and that's kind of my concern with this one. Unsung Melody is got Ray Gutierrez aboard. It's a good jockey for sprints, and you can see this one likes to get on the front end and has been successful. Just broke her maiden. And but look at the competition she's had. Now, she ran on LeCompte Day at the fairgrounds. Merlotza's really nice Brad Cox filly, and so is Mariah's Appeal's a good one, too. That second race, she finished second to Punch Bowl, who just missed winning in the Ashland. And Sacred Wish came back in the Gulfstream Oaks to finish second. So that was a pretty nice key race. And you see, she built on it and came right back out and won. And beat Into Love, another one who I believe ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. So that's a good class grouping, and you'd have to believe if she's running at that level that she's going to be competitive here. So this is one you want to think about using. Charlie May is kind of interesting. This is one that you have to look a little bit to see something. You can see she's had a lot of bites at the apple, had 3 to break her maiden, and then they shot enough in her to put her in stakes races, and she ran against Defining Purpose, who just won an Oaks Prep, and Classy Bridget, who's been a really solid filly, and but didn't do too well against either of them. So, and you could see at that point they decided, okay, well, let's put her in the claiming ranks, but it seemed to wake something up in her a little bit. I don't know, because they put her in an optional claimer next, and she didn't run bad. And the next one, she did pretty well in that race with Positano Sunset. She was in tight early and really couldn't get to where she wanted to. And even though they passed her at the top of the turn, she did keep on pretty gamely. And that was the thing I noticed more than anything else. And you can see, that was a pretty good race, an optional 100,000. So there's a little bit of a drop in class here. So this is one maybe you want to think about under Charlie May. I don't know that a win candidate is possible, but underneath is, I think. Devious Stairs is a Wesley Ward trainee, and immediately you have to take this one seriously. He's just winning everything in sight, seemingly at Keeneland. And it's a meet he definitely gears up for, and his horses are all ready to run. This one did win it first asking at Turfway on the synthetic, and got Johnny V aboard and coming off of freshening. Fully expect this one to be competitive here, and I would definitely use. Zappo is a pretty interesting horse to me. Got Gerardo Corrales aboard, who's a pretty good jockey. But the last, she won her maiden and did it. You can see she won it pretty handily. Was wrapped up late at Ellis Park. Now, granted, it was in the mud, but she won by 9 1/4 lengths, so that shows ability. And then came out in the debutante and totally ran a dud. Don't really know exactly what happened there, but it was not. She just didn't feel like running. But the interesting part is she came back on synthetic at Turfway in an option 50 and showed that perhaps the debutante was a bit of a fluke. And she came back and ran her career high buyer and did it pretty impressively. So I got to believe this one has more in the tank for this race. and second off the layoff should be a good place to be. And she won in it. She won against winners, and that was a decent class level more than anything else. So I think if she takes another step forward here, that puts her right in the mix. So this is one I definitely would consider for under, and perhaps if you want to be bold, think about a win ticket. Frosciato is owned by Godolphin and trained by Owen Hardy, and got Tyler Gaffleone on, who's having a nice meet at Keeneland. This one, you can't say, one broker made the first asking, which is a good thing. And next race at Tampa did okay. I don't know. There's just something about this one. The fact maybe it's at Tampa, and this would be a pretty big step up class wise. This one just doesn't excite me a whole lot. I could definitely see if you want to use it. I wouldn't talk you out of it, but I don't. I just don't see it here. Maybe underneath. Socially Selective, trained by Bill Matt, got Rod Ortiz aboard. And interestingly enough, just as a side note, Rod's not having the greatest meet at Keeneland. And I think one of the reasons that Chad Brown doesn't do well at Keeneland. So it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But if we take a look at Socially Selective, the buyers tower over anything in this field. Won at first asking and pretty handily. Padma's not a bad horse, also trained by Bill Mott. But you look at the next race, the Purple Martin at Elkhorn, and she ran second to Key of Life, who just came back and won a stakes race at Keeneland at 7 furlongs, in pretty good fashion. And she beat Classy Bridget, who we mentioned earlier is another nice filly who's done very well this year. So definitely her class level puts her a lot higher up on the ladder than most of them here. And I think this one is an obvious win candidate. Bill Mott second off the layoff. I think this one should be expected to fire well. The second leg of the pick four is the 8th at Keeneland, and it's the Grade 2 Dixiana Elkhorn Stakes. It's running 1.5 miles on turf for 4-year-olds and up, and this is a pretty interesting race to be certain. And there's a lot of old. You might as well call this the Old Guard Classic because there's a lot of older horses running in this. And when I say older, I mean very old. Speaking of which, number 1 is Channel Maker, who's a 9-year-old, trained by Bill Mott, Johnny V aboard. This one's been around forever, and I've never been a fan of him, got to be honest. Probably is going to want to get to the lead. That's what this one will do. It doesn't have to have it, but more than likely will be up near the pace. I don't think this one is totally one-paced. And so there's no, never has any kick in the stretch. And so I just don't, with the other contenders in here, I don't think this race sets up very well for this one, and I'm not going to use. Value Engineering is in really good form right now, trained by Mike Maker, who is the marathon turf trainer. Got Tyler Gaffleone aboard, won the McDermott and finished second in the McKnight, and I'm actually surprised that he lost that one. Looked like he had it wrapped up, but Red Knight got the better of him. This one's in excellent form, and Mike Maker's the kind of trainer that can keep him in good form. The one interesting thing is you lose Jose Ortiz here, who I believe is at Oakland, but on Saturday. But nonetheless, Tyler Gaffleone, a worthy substitute to say the least. I think all systems are go here. There's no reason not to use this one. You have to include in the mix. Rising Empire is one that seems to have found his stride at 5 years old as soon as they moved him to turf. He really seems to have taken off. You can see he's getting better with every start. In particular, the last race, the Munis, we thought he'd do well, and we were rewarded for our faith. He tried to wire the field as we expected, and he just came up a hair short to Spooky Channel. But I think it demonstrated that this one belongs at the stakes level, which is really important. And I think the distance isn't going to be a problem for this one, being by Empire Maker with Smart Strike on the bottom. Should get out to the lead and try to wire the field, and it's entirely possible, given the fact that a couple of these have been running at longer distances for a couple races this year, and they're a little older, so perhaps it's a little harder for them to sustain their form. So I think you're going to get a 6-1. I consider to be good value for this one, and I think we're going to take a shot with. Another mystery is has been at this class level for quite some time, and just seems to be a cut below. I think this one will run a good race. If you look, he's following the same pattern that he did last year. He ran in the Munis, he ran in the Munis and did okay, not great, and then he followed it up with a really nice Elkhorn. And so perhaps another good race is in the offing here. The only thing with this one is that really, to me, is the big determinant. This one just doesn't close the deal. Not lately, anyway. Just always seems to be right around it. If you go back and look at the Munis in particular, I thought this horse had a real chance to take over the race and just didn't do it. And I think there's, I don't know whether it's Father Time catching up with or not. I think this one can definitely run with the better horses here. I just don't think that he can beat them. And that for that reason, more than anything, I'm just not going to use. Red Knight, this is his wheelhouse distance, 1.5 miles. He's, run at this distance 13 times, 5 firsts and 3 seconds. So he likes to run 1.5 miles, and that's what he does. He's got Mike Maker as the trainer, again, the marathon master. And he's got Gerardo Corrales aboard, and who's run on him and won before. There's really no reason not to include this one. The British Cup Turf, you just draw a line through that. He was outmatched. I mean, there's no sin in not doing well in that race, particularly with horses like Rebel's Romance in it. But you see, he came back and on Pegasus World Cup Day in the WL McKnight, he came back and he won when I thought perhaps Father Time had caught up with it. Boy, was I wrong. So this one, I think it's very logical with a freshening that he should run just fine. 5-2 was a little bit of an underlay to me compared with the rest of the field, but I think you have to use him for sure. Shoddy. It was one that kind of outran his odds in the WL McKnight, and he had a decent record coming up to the Red Smith, and then he kind of it looked to that was just an indication that the stakes level isn't where this one wants to be. But then in the WL McKnight, he came back and he ran a pretty good race and outran his odds at 37-1 to get fourth. But then the McDermott, we were kind of high on him. He looked like he was going to take another step forward, and he really didn't. He just sort of languished there. And this is third off the layoff. That's one thing you can say. But I just like others better in this race, and I think this one had a chance to move forward and didn't take it, and I don't expect it to happen here. House Street is kind of the now horse. People are awful excited about this one. If you watch that last race, won pretty easily at 1 mile and 3/8, so the distance isn't going to be a problem here, I don't think. Got Flavian Pratt aboard, whereas Rod had him last time, but nonetheless, I think this horse has talent and is definitely getting better. You can see the progression buyer-wise, but let's just remember this. This is a really seasoned group of stakes winners, for the most part, that this one's going against. And secondly, the class level of that last race was not very high. Now, he ran a big race. He ran very well, but he didn't beat much. So I want to see him do it at the stakes level before I get really sold on this one. Now, at 10-1, that is a decent price. And is it worth it to invest to see if this one has the goods? Might be. I wouldn't talk you out of using this one at all. I just have a feeling that this is a really significant step up in class. I'm just not sure this one is quite ready to handle it. That's really my only concern. Other than that, I think I could definitely see using this one. Highest honors, I tried really hard to like this horse. I really did. I went back and I watched 4 of his races, And the main reason is because you got Chad Brown and you got Arad Ortiz. And I knew immediately this one would be chalk. I look back and I can't find any reason to like this horse. He's a plotter. He's got no late kick, and he just sort of goes around the track. And I just can't see it. I think he could definitely get in the money in this race, but I don't see him on top. I just don't. I watched him. It just always seems there's somebody better. And the main thing is he needs to get clear. He seems to find traffic quite a bit. Now, maybe in the 8-hole, they'll be able to swing him out wide so he can get into stride. But most of the time, he finds ways to not get to find trouble. And there are horses that do that. They find traffic and they find difficulty. And Zandon was a great example of that last year. So I'm not going to use this one. If you want to, go ahead. But I just think there's others more qualified to win this race. Verstappen is very interesting to me. Brendan Walsh is doing well this meet. And this one is a 4-year-old, and his last 3 efforts, granted, were on synthetic, but he showed steady improvement in each, and the class levels were going up as well. And so that tells me this one is on the move and is on the upswing. Now, you're switching back to turf, but you can see this one has run on turf before and done pretty well. Not at the Stks level, but you can see that this one has been competitive. And and the other thing is it had 11 starts and has 8 in the money finishes. So this horse likes to compete and likes to win. So I think with the improvement at 20-1, if you're looking for an injection of new blood into this race, why not this horse? And you get it at 20-1. That's kind of my thinking with this. We've got a lot of old hat horses in here. And I think this one is definitely worth a shot to put on your tickets, and I'm going to use. Tis the Bomb. I'm kind of giving up on this horse. He just hasn't done it. I mean, what more can you say? This year he just hasn't fired in any race whatsoever. Now, the thing you got to go back to is Hit It a Bomb is a great synthetic sire, and you see his best efforts have been on synthetic. He had some good early success on turf, but he just has not built on it this year whatsoever. He's had 3 bites at the apple this year, a couple at the fairgrounds, and an allowance race at Keeneland, and he hasn't done anything in any of them. And I don't see any reason to believe that this one is going to fire today, especially coming off Lasix, which, as we've belabored, Kenny McPeak, horses do not run well when they go off Lasix. So this one is a total toss for me. Third leg of the pick 4 is the 9th race at Keeneland, and it's the Grade 3 Ben Ali Stakes. It's run at a 1 3/16 on the dirt, and it's for 4-year-olds and up, and it's a Grade 3. Number 1 is Pioneer of Medina. I can't really trust this horse. He was doing pretty well. I had some faith in him at the end of last year, and we were rewarded. He got a really nice Harlan's Holiday, and he showed a lot of pluck in that race. Boy, he fought all the way around the track. But in the mine shaft, he came out, and he won as expected. But then he kind of threw in a dud in the New Orleans Classic, and I tend to believe that those last 2 races took a little bit out of him. They were pretty tough efforts. Perhaps he can rebound here. I'm just not willing to back him in this spot. I think there's others that appeal more. Trademark is a horse I kind of liked at the end of last year. He was doing pretty well. He's a front runner. He'll likely get on the lead, and just kind of looks overmatched a little bit here. I think there's others that are more suited to win this race. His first start this year at 4 years old came out and really didn't do very well in the Challenger. And Skippy Longstocking is back here as well as a couple others. And perhaps another move forward second off the layoff is possible. And the fact that maybe there isn't a lot of early speed here, he could hang around. But I don't consider him to be a win candidate. Call Me Fast was another one that was a bit of a disappointment in the last race. Been running on the front end, and doing pretty well. The Essex was the first entree into Stks, and there wasn't a lot of early speed in that race, and this horse just didn't get out to the lead, and that pretty much was it for the rest of the race. At the time, we were thinking that Call Me Fast and Classic Causeway would hook up, as well as Forza d'Oro, and that this one, having a little better lick, would get by him, and just didn't get to the lead. That might be different here. This one will probably try to get up on the lead, and then it'll be a question of whether or not he's good enough, and I don't think he is. He will have to wire the field, and I just don't think he's going to do it in this spot. He looks a little outclassed to me, so he's a toss. Skippy Longstocking is the best horse in this race. That's the bottom line. This horse is undefeated at Grade 3 Stks, and this is a Grade 3. You see that every time they try to step this one up, it usually doesn't work out too well, save for the Belmont and even the Preakness, you could say. But the Pegasus World Cup was just outclassed. Really didn't run well. It was a bit of a surprise. Thought would run a little better. And the Pennsylvania Derby running against Tabor and Zandon didn't do too well. But this is where this horse wants to be. It's a graded stakes. It's got a Rod Ortiz aboard and did very well in the Challenger last time. And, shook off the Pegasus World Cup pretty easily. That's really what I like more than anything. And I think this one should definitely be fine. I mean, should definitely be a win candidate. And I'm probably going to single. Rattle and Roll, it hasn't been bad this year. I never really was a big fan of this horse. I thought he was a cut below on the Derby trail. Never seemed to really get to make any steps forward. Towards the end of the year, he started getting a little better. The last race, he didn't. Even with Lasix, he was a disappointment. He had pace to run to, and he just couldn't seem to get there. Now he's coming off Lasix, and as we know, Kenny McPeek's off Lasix just aren't good. And this one at 3-1, I'm not going to use whatsoever. Happy American had a little period of prosperity towards the end of last year and beginning of this year at the fairgrounds with a Tenacious and New Orleans handicap. And but really, the last two races have not been encouraging. And I think this one is kind of up against it here. The added ground is probably a plus, and we'll give this one a little more time to factor. I can't use this one on top, especially coming from behind. I don't think that's where you want to be in this race, but certainly under at 12-1 is a pretty good bet, and I would consider using in the exotics. Tony Port is another one, kind of like Tis the Bomb. When's it going to happen? I mean, just would seem to be waiting for this one, and it has not delivered. Didn't build on, the 3-year-old year wasn't bad, and had some nice efforts in the Lexington, the Jeff Ruby, and you said, okay, well, bombed out or didn't bomb out, but didn't do great in the Derby. You said, well, maybe this one just needs a little more time. Came out, won the Ohio Derby, finished a good third in the Jim Dandy, and then bombed in the Pennsylvania Derby. Didn't do very well to start this year in the Mine Shaft, and did a little better in the Essex, but still really wasn't a factor whatsoever. So Brad Cox, third off the layup, this horse I would assume be competitive in this race. It's really hard to trust, though. I mean, even with Flavian Pratt aboard, this horse has had good jockeys on him. He's had a Rod, he's had Florent Giroux, Rafael Bejarano, and so this is kind of one. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't with this horse. 8-1 is a decent price. And in a smaller field, maybe if Skippy Longstocking doesn't fire, you think about this one. But it's really hard to trust based upon prior efforts. The last leg of the pick four is the 10th race at Keeneland, and it's a starter allowance, or a conditional allowance, rather, for 4-year-olds and up, run on the turf at 5.5 furlongs. And number one is Ice Chocolat. Last ran in the Colonel Power at the fairgrounds, and didn't do too bad. Was on the worst part of the turf course, being on the inside, and so maybe we can use that as a little bit as an excuse. I don't know. Ray Lou Gutierrez, I was a little surprised he kept him over towards the rail when everybody else was gravitating towards the outside. So maybe that's a little bit of a something there. So you perhaps can forgive that effort a little bit. There are others I prefer more in here, but 12-1 isn't a bad price. This one just seems a cut below. Maybe you think more about the exotics. Smokin' Jay is a horse that, he's a win candidate. What more can you say? He has been at this level plenty of times and been competitive. Don't see any reason why he won't be here. Came off a long layoff last month and ran a career high buyer, which is always a good sign, even for a 5-year-old. So no reason to think that this one won't be in good form for this race. Got Tyler Gaffleone aboard, and Kelsey Danner is a good trainer. So I expect all systems to go, and you have to use this horse. Beer Can Man is one of a couple in this race that have question marks about them. This one hasn't run in over a year and has had a couple of decent-sized layoffs. When this one was on, he was really good, no doubt about it. Ran most of the efforts on the West Coast. I think it does speak to this one that he started at Indiana Grand and was able to move to the West Coast to more significant competition and fared well. So I think this one is definitely one to consider. Phil D'Amato, he's normally a California trainer. If you brought this one to Keeneland, I think that says a lot. He's got Flavian Pratt aboard, and they clip at 30%, the two of them. So Little Red Feather Racing is a stalwart California outfit. 5-1. It's I think is a decent price for this first one's back. That's really the only question: is will this one be okay after such a long layoff? And I kind of go on the fence with this one. And if it was like a couple of months, that's different. But this has been over a year, and that's really my only issue. Phil D'Amato's pretty good with them, so I'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to use this one. But I wouldn't talk you out of it anyway. City Drifter, to me, just doesn't look good enough. He hasn't run at the class level he's about to, and meaning that there are some horses in here who've run at a lot higher classes than a conditional allowance. So I think it raises the level of this race. And this one really has been okay, but not great. And I just don't see this one stacking up with the others, and it's that simple. Front Run to Fed is kind of interesting to me. You see this is a bit of a class drop, sort of. And you see that this one has been in stakes level competition for quite some time, even so much as ran in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or Breeders' Cup Turf Mile and the 4-Star Dave. So this one's no stranger to good competition. Hasn't been so hot. Wasn't so hot ending last year. Had the Breeders' Cup. We can draw a line through that. But the race following wasn't so hot. Maybe it's a good thing to get that post-Breeders' Cup race out of the system. And now has had a layoff and has been freshened up. I think this one could sit mid-pack. There seems to be a lot of early pace in this race. I think at 15-1, you're certainly getting a nice price. And I think this is one you want to consider. No Balls is a great name, by the way, is trained by Larry Ravelli, and he's really good with turf sprints and layoffs and synthetic to turf. He's one of the few trainers who has a really good angle. So this is a good wheelhouse type of place for this horse to be. Got Gerardo Corrales aboard. That's one of Larry's A riders. And so all systems appear to be go here from that standpoint. If we look at the running lines, you can see this one wants to get on the engine, and that's fine in this situation. And has done very well at has won some ungraded stakes on synthetic, has been competitive on turf in turf sprints, and at 4 years old, coming out, equaling his career high buyer to start is always a good thing. So I'm going to expect better in this one, and I don't see any reason why this one couldn't get on the engine and just take them all the way. So I think this one is a really good use, and particularly at 8-1. These Keeneland turf sprints are wide open. There's just a lot of options. So I think while you certainly have to consider the chalk, particularly in a race like this, where some of the horses, more prominent ones, have question marks. I think horses like this make a really good fit, and you want to keep on your tickets. Anguston is another one that has had a lot of layoffs, and has had nearly 2 year layoffs. Now came back in the Colonel Power and did pretty well, and we knew this because this horse is good, and when he's running, he's a good horse. But he's 8 years old, and it's just not. It's really hard to trust this one. Jason Barkley hasn't been doing so well this meet, and the Biscuit hasn't either. But this one has been freshened, and I don't see any reason why this one wouldn't be competitive here. It's just a question of what kind of price you're going to get. 10-1 probably is about right, but I have others who are on the upswing that I want to take a shot with. So this one, again, you can use, and I wouldn't talk you out of it, but I want more ones with more upswing and that don't have that in the back about the long layoffs and the questions of condition. Mark of the Z is interesting because this one didn't do too bad in the Shakertown a couple of weeks ago. But here's the thing: I don't. It's not too often that I watch a race where I just look and say, boy, the jockey really didn't give this one a good ride. This one broke fine. He was right up near the leaders. And then all of a sudden, then E.T. Baird just took this one back, just let him drift to the rear. Lost all position in a turf sprint that was a little, being on the engine or being up near the leaders was a good place to be. And he took this one all the way to the back and then tried to re-rally. And you can see he did. But by that point, he had run into he hit some traffic in the stretch, and there was just no hope of getting up to factor. So to me, it was a big time jockey error that costed this one any chance in the race. You could see he got a 90 and was fairly competitive at a Grade 2 stakes race, coming second off the layoff. The only thing I say, I look at this and go, there's E.T. Baird again. Is he going to do that again with this one? If you want to use this one, I don't blame you. But I'm not going to trust a jockey who was such a lousy ride last time to do it. E.T. Baird's a good jockey, I might add. But that just soured me on this horse. Johnny Unleashed, they keep waiting to come back to that second in the Shakertown in 2022 and has not even come close to that since. I'm not going to believe this one's going to do it again, so I am not going to include. Just Might is one that I think it's kind of Father Time is catching up with. You can see that the process is really nice prior turf sprint form, the Duncan Kenner, the Colonel Power. This one was running in some good races. But you also can see the steady buyer decline over the course of the last year. Came out this year and ran a buyer level this one probably hasn't hit in like 2 or 3 years prior to. Something tells me this one is on the way down, and I certainly don't want to be investing, especially at 7-2, with a horse that's on the way out. Nobody Listens is, we know it's pretty easy to tell what this one wants to do. You look at those running lines, it's all ones. And I think this one will certainly be on the engine in this case. Going to be awful tough to wire the field with other early speed signed on here. But I think this one is definitely one that you have to use when you consider in 20 starts, this one has 17 finishes in the money. Last year was 7 out of 8 in the money with 4 wins. And this one likes to win. I don't think you can exclude a horse like this from your tickets. And I think at 8-1, that's nice value for a horse who really wants to win. So I'm going to use that. Nobody listens. Dowagiac Chief, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, just doesn't look good enough to me. It's that simple. Has been running on roots. Now, that's one thing you can say is that the route to sprint, the cutback, might be what the doctor ordered for this one. But if you consider this one wants to run on the engine with others more prominent who like to do the same thing, and being parked out on the 12 hole, I'm not willing to invest, so I wouldn't be using this one. Spicy Marge, Wesley Ward, you got to use. It's that simple. This one's pretty good, but Wesley Ward's just so hot at Keeneland right now. If this one draws in, you've got to put in your tickets at 50-1. Absolutely. John Terranova is a good trainer, and our shot probably has just as good a chance as any of factoring here. It would be price dependent whether or not I use, and I kind of like others a little bit more. But you can see one thing you might want to note is that this one had some trouble in the last race and still was able to prevail. Granted, it was on dirt, but that tells me this one's probably in pretty good form. So might be one you want to think about if he draws in. Friar Lawrence, I think, is a late runner, and there aren't a lot of them in this race, and that might be a good thing. This one has some quality and appears to be on the upswing. And I think at 4 years old, this one is ready to run a good race if moved on. So I would consider Friar Lawrence for underneath primarily. And a Gallant Guy, I don't see anything to get really excited about. Just don't think he's good enough, so I wouldn't use. So here's our late pick 4 ticket. In the 7th, we're going to use 4-7. I wouldn't blame you if you want to single the 7. I just want to have a little bit of defense with the Wesley Ward selection, just given how hot his barn is. In the Elkhorn, we're going to use 2, 3, 5, and 9. We want to get those horses who appear to be on the upswing, maybe a little bit of new blood, coupled with the old guard. In the 9th race, we're going to single Skippy Longstocking. I think he's the class of the field, and he's undefeated in graded stakes. And that singling allows us to spread a little bit. In the 10th race, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 11. I think that's a fairly contentious turf sprint as they are at Keeneland, so we want to give ourselves as many options as possible. So that's 2 times 4 is 8 times 5 is 40. That's a $20 ticket on a 50-cent base. And as always, if you use Ticketmaker with the daily racing form, you can get it more economical. I think this one has the danger of being a little chalky in the first 3 races. So that's why we want to keep our ticket size small. These sequences at Keeneland are pretty tough, particularly on the turf. Boy, you got all these trainers pointing for these races, and it really makes for a handicapping challenge, to say the least. You can see how many different ways there are to go in these races, and none of them are wrong. So I wish you the best of luck in formulating your own tickets, and hopefully our analysis helped you along the way. We will have more with the Keeneland Card Series throughout the conclusion of the meet. Plus, we will have our elements of handicapping the Derby. We'll be doing that probably late next week. And we'll also have a revised Kentucky Derby top 20 list to reflect any defections or unseen additions or what have you. Also, because I've been doing my deep dive, I may have some insights about some of the horses that I hadn't revealed before. Or we've had some things confirmed. We've had some things disproven, and that always happens when you start looking into these horses a little deeper. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. And thanks for coming by. We do appreciate it. And again, best of luck this weekend. I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.